turn it over to guys from Microsoft Canada. Thanks for coming through the Rush Hour chat. We've got Daniel and Barnaby and Peter. So
cool.
Welcome.
It's given a mic. So you have to hook up?
Yeah.
Okay. So while Peter's hooking up, maybe we should just introduce ourselves.
You guys introduce yourselves.
All right. You guys, do you need this on from the back? No? All right, good. So my name is Daniel Shapiro. I am product manager in our developer group. I cover all of our platforms. You may have heard things like .NET, Silverlight, developers starting IE8, stuff like that. And my past, so you know kind of where I'm from, I spent a lot of time at Microsoft on our academic initiatives, and that's kind of why I'm here. Also, I'm very excited about startups. I was thinking about it on the way over. I think I spent time in 5 startups, and I actually mentor 2 startup companies on the side in kind of my spare time. And that's a little bit about me.
Perfect. Thanks, Daniel. My name is Barnaby Jeans. I'm the audience marketing manager. I work with Daniel and Peter. And basically, my role is to take a lot of the work that the product managers do and figure out how do we deliver that to the developer audience specifically to make sure that we're providing the right sort of training, the right sort of sessions, basically making sure that people are looking at our tools, using our tools, and are satisfied with those products. Similar to Daniel, kind of been all over the industry, had a very competitive background, spent a fair bit of time at Oracle and Red Hat prior to coming over to Microsoft, so I kind of look at things from a couple of different angles.
Yeah, my name is Peter Van der Zel, and I apologise for being late, but I guess you people from Waterloo know where the ring road is. As you can probably tell, I'm not from here, so I was heading straight ahead looking for the stop sign and just kept on going, so apologies for being late.
That's right.
That's all right. So Peter Van der Zel, I manage the customer and partner team within the development platform group. So that's the group that Daniel, Barnaby and I work for, which I sort of tell everyone is probably the coolest group that we have within Microsoft Canada. We're the guys that get to go out there and evangelise all the latest and greatest product stuff that hasn't been launched yet. We talk to customers, partners, developers, IT professionals. So we do all the cool and new stuff. So we have pretty neat jobs. I manage a team of software architects who, they talk to primarily people who make decisions within customers and partners. So that's a bit about me. I've been with Microsoft almost 10 years, so I'm an old guy, probably by your guys' standards, and spent quite a bit of time in New Zealand, which is my home country, and married a Canadian, and she dragged me up to the cold winters. So I mean, it's a great country. So I've been here for about 2.5 years up here in Canada. Now I have got a few slides that I wanted to put up.
Yeah, you're not going to get them up.
I don't know that.
This awesome screen here.
Does anyone have a S video cable kicking around? Am I grabbing that?
So during the quick break, I will tell you, and when I walked in, you guys have this, I guess, chalkboard with what to do. So, and I was asking them, I saw there you have Heroes Night on Monday, which is fantastic, and anyone that watched it was a great Monday night for me too. But Tuesday night, you don't have Fringe Night, and I highly urge you to build a Fringe Night, especially with a TV like this, turn the lights off, and then enjoy the nightmares for the rest of the night.
No, it's just video. I mean, what we had planned to do tonight is I was going to, I will, talk about Microsoft and our contributions to the local software economy. And what we mean by that is how we promote Canadian businesses, being successful, setting up, how we sort of mentor them, give them technical skills, things like that. So, I can just go ahead and talk a bit about that. I've got some slides here that I'll sort of use as prompts. If we get them up on the screen, that's fantastic as well. Probably take about sort of 15-20 minutes to do that, and then I think the rest of the time we'll just use it to be open up to questions. So, sound good to you guys? Yeah. Excellent. So, our local software economy initiative. Essentially, we sort of have 4 things that we do. One is we work with venture capital companies. Okay, so these are the folks that are, if you're thinking about doing a startup, will provide you with money to actually start that particular business. So there's a bunch of them, all around Canada, and we sort of deal with many of them, but certainly a lot of in the GTA area. And we do a number of things with those guys. We work with them and invite them to summits where in fact there's one going on starting tomorrow down in Silicon Valley, where we invite a bunch of these venture capital people, people with hopefully lots of money down there, and we tell them about all the new and exciting things that we're thinking about. We'll also tell them which things, which areas from a technology perspective, in terms of how we look at the market are actually done as well. It's actually interesting. I went down to the summit last year down in the valley, and I was sitting with a VC who was actually looking at investing in a security firm, and we sort of went through this day, and they had the security expert get up and say, right, here's the 6 areas that are done. Don't even bother investing in any companies that are doing things in these particular areas. And you kind of said that was kind of a good tip, because I was going to put a whole lot of money into a company that was doing something that was essentially already done. So we do that. We also do local sort of VC roundtable events. That's primarily for us to get feedback from the local VCs on what they're interested in. So we have a bit of dialogue with them, a bit of feedback, and then we'll also run days where we'll actually give them updates on particular technologies or particular parts of the market, so they can sort of understand again where our heads are in terms of things that we're looking at investing in and things that we would support. There's also, from a VC perspective, there's a group, and I'm going to show you the website, but these folks are based out of Redmond, called the Emerging Business Team. And the Emerging Business Team are a group of what we call portfolio managers who essentially bring together startups with capital, venture capital, and they'll also provide dialogue back into the product groups as well, the Microsoft product groups. So they spend their whole time, they're broken down by, I say portfolio, sort of online gaming, security, whatever it may be. And they actually just spend their whole time talking to venture capital companies, startups, and trying to bring that whole thing together. And out of those relationships, there have been quite a few companies that have actually been purchased by Microsoft. So that's another thing we do around the VC side. It's a pretty simple slide anyway. But we also do the Infusion Angels Innovation Centre, or the IAIC, sponsored by Microsoft. So that's over at the Accelerator Centre, not far from here. You guys are familiar with the Accelerator Centre? Yeah. Sort of, have any of you actually been over to any of the events that we've held over there? Yeah. Okay, that's great.
There's one coming up.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. There's one coming up next Tuesday. I'll definitely talk about that. So we have these innovation centres all around the world, and they're focused on helping build local skills. They're focused on innovation, and again, hopefully, what we hope comes out of it are successful businesses, successful Canadian businesses in this case. Now, the types of activities that we have there, we run, as Sean said, we run events, both technical and business events. So we run events where we get pretty much every month we will get an entrepreneur to come in and talk about how they started up a successful business. We have folks from our side coming in talking about the technology side of things. So what's the latest thing that's happening on the web, or what's the latest thing that's happening in the world of services, or whatever it may be. So we run these sort of technical sessions. The other thing that we do is we actually have these things called office hours, where people from Microsoft and Infusion, our partner in the centre, will actually come in, and anyone can book time and actually come and ask whatever questions you want about starting up a new business. I get a lot of, I've done a number of these. I get a lot of questions about how to partner with Microsoft. Microsoft's a sort of big, scary at times company, and how do I actually just navigate through Microsoft to actually get to the right people? I had one interesting conversation with a guy that came in with actually a pretty neat idea, and he wanted to know, how he could get this thing off the ground, whether it was interesting. I thought it was an interesting idea, and from a technology perspective, he had, it was fantastic, but this particular person didn't understand how to raise money. When I asked him how he was going to raise money, he said, well, I guess I'll ask my dad, which is, if you've got a well-funded dad, that's not a bad option. But we spent about an hour and a half just talking through, how to raise finance, how the capital markets work, all those sorts of things. So you get to have a look at the profile of the person that's coming in, and then you can actually, go in and spend an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, however long you need to. Somebody's rubbing off one of the better ideas I heard. And just spend as much time as you need with one of the executives that comes in from Microsoft or Infusion or one of those sorts of places. The actual facility is quite nice too. It's kitted out with brand new Dell hardware, obviously all our software. There's nice big printers in there. And so if you want to just go and load up some software and try it out in a lab style environment, you can go into that environment. I think there's probably around 12 seats there. We've actually had one of the, we actually had a startup company actually working out of that office for quite some time as well. So that is a really neat facility. So startup engagement. I'm going to talk about a couple of things. We have a couple of programs specifically for software startups, and we have a site that I'll show you on the next slide. We also sponsor a number of events. So, some of the big events. So there was a Web2 Expo in New York last week. There's one, I think it's out of Austin, South by Southwest that they have. Some of the big sort of startup conferences they have. But we've also got a guy based out of the GTA called David Crow, whose whole job, as far as I can gather, is to go out and work with web startups and find the next big, the next big thing from a Canadian perspective, and obviously try and get them onto our platform and all that sort of thing. But this is a guy that's actually done a number of startups. He's very active in the community. He brings together events where we bring together, startups and the funders, or the VCs, the capital people. We sponsor some of those events. Demo camps, startup camps, those sorts of things. So David's very, very active in that community, and we can certainly put you in touch with him if you've got any ideas. And then the final sort of pillar would be the government engagement that we do. We engage with the government in a variety of ways. We've got a public sector team at Microsoft, and that's all they do. They sort of sell and deal with the government. But we also deal with the government through initiatives like the Innovation Centre. So the federal and provincial government, big sponsors of the Accelerator Centre. So we had some engagement with them through that. I was trying to think of the Ontario Centres of Excellence are obviously over there, so they actually provide funding for startups from a provincial perspective, so we have engagement that way. I've done some work with the Alberta government, who's very active in trying to get technology startups in that particular market. And probably the final thing to mention, and I will talk about this in a bit more detail, but we did open up a Microsoft Development Centre out in Richmond, BC. And I'll talk a bit more about that, but that was obviously something that we worked very hard with the federal and provincial governments on, so we're sort of closely tied that way as well. So I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about this. So MicrosoftStartupZone.com is sort of our portal for everything that you want to know about how to engage with Microsoft. If you're a software startup. So it has information about a number of our programs. So I'll talk a bit about the Empower program, which is a program targeted at startup software companies. And this is also the place that you'll see you can actually get information. There are blogs that are set up by these portfolio managers in the emerging business team. So if you were interested in setting up, I don't know, a gaming company, there's a gaming section that you can go to where you can see what the person that's running that sort of area is thinking about, and then you can potentially get in contact with that person through that process. You fill out forms of information about the company that you set up, what you're doing, and then they'll sort of filter it through and hopefully give you some advice on where to go next. So that is a great resource. So that's where I send most people who are interested in doing something, setting up a software company. Canada has a landing page on it, so we have our own page where we put information about some of the events that are going on at the local level. So MicrosoftStartupZone.com. And the next thing I wanted to talk about was Empower for ISVs, which is really our, what's that, sorry? Yeah, which is really our on-ramp program. And essentially, in a nutshell, there are a number of services that you would get if you sign up as a partner, and there is a fee that you pay for actually being part of this program. It's around $400 a year. And you get access to software for development, software for internal use, so we get all, you get all that software. And then there's a number of other services like access to sort of industry market research. So if you're looking at a particular idea or technology, you can actually go and have a look at what the analysts are saying about that. There are there's training, search engine optimization, specific product information, access to partners in other markets as well. So if you're wanting to set up a business in Canada and take it into the US, we have you have access to other Microsoft partners, and you can actually get access to that sort of expertise that way as well. And things like going through the Veritas system and getting the designed and certified logos and those sorts of things. And I can certainly take more questions on that as we go through. Microsoft Canada Development Centre, as I said, this is something, we've got about 300 people out in Richmond, BC. A lot of people from overseas come into the centre, but we hire Canadians as well. There's all sorts of development going on there, from Xbox to SharePoint to Office. They actually work on behalf of the product teams in Redmond. So pretty neat facility. As I said, we work closely with the government on it, and it's gone from essentially 0 to 300 people in about an 18-month period. So just something to be aware of, and something interesting that Microsoft's doing in Canada. I wanted to let Daniel just, I've literally just got 2 more slides, and then we can get into the Q&A. Daniel is going to speak about DreamSpark.
So I think like half of you gasped when you heard that, if you want to, there's still a $400 fee on the on the partner program.
There's a lot of other services that you get from that.
But aware that we've been in the student marketplace for a while. We've been working with students, institutions for at least 12, 15 years in terms of just making sure that we're providing tools and resources to be able to build companies, also learn whether it's studying computer science or engineering on the tools. We never want the price of the tools, at least the commercial price of tools, to get in the way of using the tools for academic use, or if you have an interest in building a business around it. DreamSpark came out as a program that basically allows you to go download today Visual Studio, Windows Server, Expression Studio, SQL Server, and XNA Game Studio. I won't get into specifically what that is, but if you're building a game company, you might be interested. To go download all that today for free, you can actually go tonight, go to dreamspark.com and download it. We do a verification that you're a student, and the way we do that today, and that will improve over time. But today, if you have an ISA card, like the EORA, whatever they use for discount cards, they do some student verification. You just enter your number to make sure that it verifies somehow that you're a student. I don't know how it magically does that, but then hey, you get to download it. We are adding a couple of other ways that hopefully over time you'll just be able to use your university login directly, so you can just log right in. But as we kind of develop this is global, so it's kind of an interesting thing to roll out. You can actually get, so I think the ISA card is like, I don't know how much, I think it's like $20, maybe less, maybe $15. Yeah, 20.
So what restrictions are there on that? Because can you use it for commercial use and stuff? Because I imagine people here would want to do that.
It's cool. So Microsoft, you use it for academic use, not commercial use, but development of it, so as you're building your company, you can absolutely use that. So in the context of what you're doing here and what philosophy, we've had lots of conversations around this, the license absolutely applies. The point where you're making money and you're continuing to develop, that's where we have the partner program like Empower,
Yeah.
sorry, that, where you can license your company for like $400 a year, and you get even more tools and platforms and all this other stuff and other resources. And we help you market and sell it also in that program and do some other stuff. But the R&D part of it, like while you're kind of bootstrapping, really there's no cost scenario here. And there's also a bunch of other no cost scenarios to bootstrap your business. And we're really trying so many ways and been quite successful in terms of making sure that if you need the tools to build a company, there's really no friction there for you. And if you ever find it, I'll give you my business card, let us know. And that's it. Actually, sorry, the other one is, so DreamSpark has all this, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that you might say, oh, I love, I don't know, pick any software out of there. Windows Server Data Center or something or other, one of those SKUs. We have something called MSDNAA, and the entire University of Waterloo is completely licensed on MSDNAA. And it's sent, I don't know where, there's a website on the Waterloo site that will tell you where to go get it. You can access every product through there, through the Waterloo district, through how they're managing MSDNAA for the university. And that is essentially our entire MSDN developer library. Every product in it is available to you at no cost.
So I think that probably the way to think about it is, so today, if you want to get access to the software, use it, get familiar with it, learn, absolutely at DreamSpark, just download the software, go through the process and download the software. If you're wanting to start up a business and there's a bunch of you and you're wanting to do development and all that sort of thing, we would push you to Empower, and there's a bunch of other business services that you get around that as well. And there are some other programs that are coming out that we sort of work on in the background later in the year. So if we've got the opportunity to come back and talk to these guys, probably maybe early next year, it might be a good thing to talk about as well. The only other slide I had to talk to was the Innovation Centre has got this Innovation in Action event next week, next Tuesday night. There will be food, students like that sort of thing. So 4:30 to 7:30, Tuesday, September 30th. So over at the Accelerator Centre, and the concept is innovation, and we've got a couple of speakers. We've got Jensen from Microsoft Corporation, who is a guy that has been involved in some really innovative work that we've done actually around Microsoft Office, which is a product that's been around for years, and people are always saying, how could you innovate around something like that? And he did some really neat things around the ribbon and the UI, and so he's going to talk about innovation from that perspective. And then we've got some folks from Infusion Development who are going to be demonstrating a Microsoft Surface, which is pretty cool because it's actually pretty hard for us to get one internally, but the Surface is like a tabletop device that's software and touch enabled that allows you to do some really neat things like, put your Zune on top of it, MP3 player, Zune, yes, and get your music out of it, digital photos, sort of move them around. A lot of hotels are looking at them for sort of kiosks for people to get access to information about the hotel and about the area. Very, very cool. Come along and have a look at it. It's one of the neatest things that we've seen for a while, and we're actually getting a lot of demand for it worldwide. And the folks at Infusion are actually one of the sort of the world leaders in doing development around this particular environment. So come along, and I'd encourage you to come along and have a look at that next Tuesday.
It's also one of the few surfaces in the world to actually see will be here.
Yeah. So other than that, I had a ton of stuff there. I kind of raced through it because we wanted to leave enough time for you guys just to ask a bunch of questions. Anything from I don't know, why IT, to what's it like to work at Microsoft, to, what sort of business should I be thinking about? Anything that's really top of mind. We just wanted to make sure we left enough time for you guys to ask questions.
So one thing I would love to learn is what do you need? So I can't tell you how many conversations. So Sean deserves a huge round. He's been working on this for at least a year, 2 years, 3 years. I don't know how long.
A year for this.
Yeah, and he's been on the phone calling every company, calling us, and we were so excited from the beginning of it. So and when we said one of the questions we were talking was kind of what do you guys need, and it's a hard answer to give because it's never been done anywhere in the world before. Trying to feel it out. So one of the things we really wanted to have a good understanding is what do you need. We want to see you guys succeed. We want to see this succeed. We want to see other universities copying you. Sorry, but never duplicating. But we want to see this expand. We want to see this growing. So what do you need to succeed? So I'm going to turn that hopefully over to you and tell us, and we can have a discussion about that.
How's your chance?
Yeah.
What kind of attributes does Microsoft look for when you're buying next companies?
When we buy a next company. Okay, no, that's a great question. Can I take that?
You could have a go at it. Yep.
So
But just remember that we're not the people that actually make the decisions on whether the company's bought, so just take it all.
But it's actually it's a great question. If you look at our history, like the companies that we've acquired, I can only speak to kind of pointing to that observation because that appears that we are not the ones we don't make that decision. I don't have the $1 billion checkbook. But if you look at everything that we use, Microsoft is we always say, and I think it's really true, that we're a very long-term thinking company. And if you come inside Microsoft, you talk to people, you really see we always think about roadmaps for where we see the future, and we kind of show that roadmap or kind of our vision for that roadmap every few years at a conference that's actually coming up next month called PDC, the Professional Developer Conference, and that's what typically Bill Gates stands up and he says, it's a very forward-looking conference where we say, here's what we think the future looks like. And this is what we're building. This is what we hope software developers and companies will, this is the ecosystem we envision. And here's everything that we're going to do to make sure that vision comes to reality. And we bring our ecosystem along with us. That vision that gets set up, so the acquisitions are based on supporting that vision. So where we cannot fill in certain puzzle pieces to that vision, typically we will acquire to fill in those puzzle pieces. And so when you look at some of the companies, it's hard to come up with just one at the top like as an example, but they're typically pieces to fill in that path along the way. So the best way I can tell you for our future is kind of try to look at the roadmap that we lay out. And you can kind of see where we're going.
I think, and I'll just give another perspective on that because I've been working with this group called the Emerging Business Team, and they are the guys that are out there looking for those puzzle pieces, as Daniel said. Now, we actually, over the past few years, we've been acquiring about 30 companies a year, which for a corporation our size is actually not a huge amount, but it's actually a lot more than we have been previously. And essentially what the product groups will do is that they'll look at the market and they'll look at what our customers want and need, what the technology that we're coming out with. And they'll say, okay, there's a piece of the puzzle that's missing. We can either build it ourselves or buy it. And that's essentially the equation they go through. How many man hours and do we have, and how much expertise do we need to actually build that particular technology or feature or product? And if it's going to cost too much, and there's somebody else that's out there that's really doing very, very well and has got sort of scale with that particular business, then we may look at buying it. As I say, I mean the best way to get advice on what we're looking to purchase and where we see the gap is by talking to these portfolio managers through the emerging business team, through that site that I showed you, the startupzone.com. And if you look at it, it's a good bet that whatever's hot on the market. So there's been some interesting acquisitions that have gone on around search, as an example. Fairly recently. A few years back when we were looking to get into, there'd been rumblings that we were going to get into, enterprise resource planning sort of for the mid-market. We made some big acquisitions around that. We made 4 big acquisitions. And there's no sort of one size fits all, because some of the companies that were bought, like I think of the massive acquisition that we made around sort of ad placement and online video games. Relatively small company, but fantastic technology, and they've done really well with their company. They got a fairly good price, whereas Great Plains was, I think it was $1.4 billion or something like that. A very established company that had been around for a long time, where we wanted to sort of, we wanted to go after that piece of the market, and we decided that we needed to buy a few companies to actually go after that market. So it's not a one size fits all, but if you think of areas that we're very competitive, or as I say, things like search, where we're competing pretty hard against all sorts of folks in that area. Social media, social networking, all those sort of areas that are hot are getting mass scale and making lots of money. Are areas that we're certainly looking at investing in. But there's lots of examples. We've got everything from security technologies to software for helping us deploy Windows out onto desktops. All sorts of things. But certainly we can give you an idea. And as I say, have a look at the Startup Zone site to just see, even by the portfolios that we're running, and and the people that are looking after these certain areas, you'll see these are the areas that we think are hot and that we're interested in having a conversation around.
So I can't give you the one idea that's going to allow you to go off and build something that's going to make Steve Ballmer want to buy you, but certainly there's lots of ideas.
The vision of what Microsoft thinks the trend in the near future will be.
So we'll probably all have a bit of input on that one, but certainly we've been talking a lot about the software plus services vision. So the idea being, there's really 3 ways that you can deliver, or that we see software delivered now. There's standard client server, done over wide area or local area networks, and that's sort of standard sort of way that a lot of software in corporates is actually delivered and used today. We see that the second sort of major model is software as a service. So that's software consumed directly over the internet, and that could be any sort of software, but typically delivered directly via a browser, charged on a monthly basis, and sort of run that way. And that's certainly a popular model for people who don't necessarily want to run their own IT shop. And then the third is sort of this, what I sort of term mass online, which is everything from search, the big sort of mass internet scale services, the Googles, the Yahoos, the MSNs, those sort of services, as well as transaction services. So there are big services out there that are actually run over and consumed from the internet around for insurance companies. There's information, tracking information, the ability to send in a document in one format and have it transformed into another and sent to a customer or a supplier. Those sorts of services that are sort of centralised and are services that not everyone would want to build, are sort of these mass online services. And what we see is, certainly over the next sort of 5 or 10 years, all 3 of those models sort of coming together. So when we talk about software plus services, it could be, a product, like Microsoft Office, actually taking a bunch of interesting services over the internet and delivering them into a user. potentially, reaching back into the back end of an organisation as well to make, to get it, accounting or human resource information out into a nice UI and then aggregating that with other services and sort of bringing those technologies together. So the sort of software plus services that you hear about is is certainly something that we talk about a lot internally. I'm trying to think of some other good examples. There are some office workspace online is potentially a good service as well, where we actually will host sort of documents and some components of Office, and then you'd actually use the power of Microsoft Office to actually get a really nice experience.
So I guess the same idea, I'm going to frame it a little bit different, is that so one critical difference you'll see between Microsoft's vision and some other companies' vision for how software fundamentally will be written, consumed, managed, and used is that we've talked for several years about the idea that the client is still so important. The desktop is and will continue to be a first-class citizen. And we went on this kind of pendulum where the market has moved completely to services, almost in terms of net new companies driving out. Primarily today, it's all website, whether it's B2C, B2B, whatever it is. It's typically mostly web-based, web-driven, web-consumed services through the browser. What's happening, and you can see this with every one of our competitors, is that, well, we're all kind of meeting in the middle. And the reason is because what everyone is realizing is that you cannot have either extreme as we move forward in the marketplace. It's not about everything being delivered on the browser. It's not about being in a disconnected state on your desktop. It is somewhere in the middle, and it's all about really user choice, whether it's the IT manager choice. Hey, I cannot manage this. I need it hosted somewhere. So like a hosted database somewhere in the cloud, or hey, I can host it here in my infrastructure. I'm going to take care of it. Great, that's actually here. Having the choice and flexibility of what the user wants and what the infrastructure can handle is really where the direction is going. And you're gonna see a lot more from Microsoft really reinforcing that choice. The ability for not only for user choice to say, hey, I want my desktop, my office to be, I love the rich, beautiful experience on my desktop with all the power and all those features and functionality. Or, hey, I want that lightweight, popping in the sky type of experience where I just want it fast on my email, whatever it is. But sometimes people want somewhere in the middle. And so that's the choice that we're not going to only enable for the consumer and for the businesses, but we're also enabling, which I think is the really amazing thing for you, is we're enabling that for the developer and the entrepreneur to actually turn on in a very easy way. Because typically that's a very hard situation for an entrepreneur or a developer to actually build, is that connected, disconnected state is actually a very difficult scenario. I don't know if any of you are kind of facing that with in terms of your business plans or kind of the technology thing, but that disconnected, connected state is a very, very challenging thing to fully think through and fully understand. And quite honestly, very few companies have actually done that really, really well.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, just to finish that, I think Daniel...
You're really long answer.
Yeah, it's okay. I think Daniel makes a really good point there about choice as well, because I think the prevailing wisdom is that everything is going to be online, everything is going to be on the web, and there's no doubt that that is the way of the future, and a lot of applications are going to be delivered via the web. But in talking to our customers, and certainly for the foreseeable future, there will be sets of, certainly businesses, consumers a different sort of story, but on the business side, there will be businesses that don't want to put their information on the web. I mean, there aren't too many businesses that I know of that want to put all their financial data up on an internet service today. Now, mostly because there are concerns about security, privacy, there are some legal obligations that companies have. So we want to be able to give customers a choice. If you are a small business who's sort of just setting up and you just need a couple of applications to get going, absolutely, maybe some of the online services are for you, but many large companies, A, they have big investments in infrastructure already, but B, they don't necessarily, they do have concerns about privacy and where their data is held, and they actually want to have more control over that. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, but certainly, as Andy said, we're not saying, although a lot, applications are moving to the web, we're saying that customers are still going to want choice, and we do need to live in both worlds, certainly for the foreseeable future.
Okay, we'll be shorter on that on the next answer. Sorry.
What do you mean by connect and disconnect?
Oh, okay. Try to think of a good. Okay, how many of you use Messenger? Some sort of instant messenger. Cool. What? I knew that. So you're online, your messenger list pops up, great. You can send a message and great. Have you ever, you're going to send a message, sometimes you unplug, you go disconnected. What happened? So this typically in some messengers it's like disconnected. Sorry, you gotta wait. Some of them will actually buffer the message, so you can type in a message, buffer it. There's a whole bunch of scenarios you actually have to think about when you're building connected, disconnected state, where hey, sometimes you're connected, sometimes you're not. And that's a very, very simple one. Much more complex one is things like email, right? So you might use email, disconnected, disconnected. If you're a very high volume user and you're literally dealing with a few hundred to 500 email messages a day, that type of volume and not only back and forth, while a very simple offline mail reader, an online mail reader might work. If you have to be fairly sophisticated in terms of synchronization, matching it up, making sure you're not losing messages, so that there's actually a very, it's a wonderful problem to sit down on one of your whiteboards and to actually dive into mainly from a user experience side, and ultimately how it impacts the user and how to deal with the inevitable unfriendly losses of data going across, or something that happens in verification. Anyways, I could spend a whole day talking about the online, offline kind of states.
I'm just going to add a different context to it. I think it's something that, being in Southern Ontario, especially in this area, you get really spoiled from a connectivity perspective. So I was up in Ottawa last week speaking at a conference, talking about people from Northern Ontario, and their comment was, all the stuff that was being talked about around social media and all the different things you can do, it's great, it sounds wonderful. We've still got businesses and consumers that are on dial-up plans. So, we're not talking third world countries, we're talking, a couple hours north, and all of a sudden you're not on the Wi-Fi, you're not on the broadband.
Yeah.
So you start to think about, is an always on, always connected world something that's a reality for everybody? Or is that the little bubble that we live in, kind of in certain parts of North America? So it's thinking about kind of where those things come together. So I think it's that whole online, offline, synchronized, how do you work when you're not connected to the server? And what Peter talked about from the software plus services, if you're talking purely online, that doesn't play in a lot of places. So you've got to think about how you got that fixed model.
And I think that's particularly relevant for a lot of the applications that you guys may be building, or certainly mobile applications. So that connected, disconnected is very relevant for those applications. So not only situations where you don't have service and people are going to still want to use their application, but just when the bandwidth has been in a situation where it's faster and slower and all those sorts of things, you need to be able to control that through the software. And there are so many of these mobile applications out there. Think of probably the best example that I can think of is maybe somebody out in one of the oil fields or something like that who's sort of they can get cell phone coverage in some parts but not in others, and they're wanting to upload data right, back to their head office, they're not going to want to be in a situation where, because the application is offline, it doesn't work. They're going to want to be able to work in a state where they can still continue entering up that information, and then when they get back to a place where they have coverage, it automatically recognises that and just uploads it for them. So those are the sorts of things that you've got to think about when you're building mobile applications. And you'd be surprised, again, how difficult that is. And although it is getting a lot easier with the software today, but also the number of scenarios that could actually happen. And I know that a lot of you are thinking about mobile applications, so that's something you've really got to think about. Think about the scenario that your users will be using it, and then sort of think back from there about how you actually need to develop the application so that it can work in both states.
Speaking of mobile applications, I know recently we got the first Android phone release, the iPhone 2 months back. What's Microsoft's vision for the mobile platform for C?
Cool. So it's So that choice thing, I'm going to just extend that conversation now on a mobile device. So I used to work on mobile embedded development tools team about 10 years ago, and we had the vision then, and we still have it now, which is that applications. So from a developer perspective, your skill set in building applications on top of Microsoft's platform, either for the desktop, server, mobile, even Xbox, anything you build on top of Microsoft, your skill set can be replicated, can apply. So if you're a .NET developer, if you're a desktop .NET developer, you're a Windows Server .NET developer, you automatically get to become a Windows Mobile .NET developer for free. You get the entire spectrum of the Microsoft platform with that. So that's one piece, and that continues. So the skill set completely applies. The second piece is around how applications necessarily run, and it's all about that it should be from a user experience side, it should be fairly consistent. You should, from a user side, you shouldn't have to relearn. So that's why the very difficult conversations about why is there still a start button on some mobile devices, so that we keep that consistent user experience and that's a really powerful thing in a lot of ways, that that a user can actually move from one device to another and not have to apply different skill set. Beyond some of the kind of those basic pieces, I'm definitely not around like the next little bits. Maybe.
I mean, not from a deep technology perspective, but I think I just want to talk about it from a sort of a big picture perspective. So if you look at certainly what Apple has done with the iPhone, they really have done a great job, and remember those guys actually control the hardware, software, very tight relationships back into the carriers, and they're experts certainly on the design side, and they've created a lot of buzz. Our approach to the mobile market has in many ways been similar to the approach that we took to the PC market, which was a model that worked pretty well for us, where we went to a number of different hardware manufacturers and worked with them to put our software on their devices. Now that's worked reasonably well for us. I mean, there are a lot of, there are millions of Windows mobile devices out there. But I think the realisation that we've had over the past few years is that that model hasn't worked quite as well on the mobile phone as it has on the PC for a number of reasons. And I was at a conference recently, and the thinking that we've got internally is that we will partner very, very deeply with fewer hardware manufacturers so that we can make sure that we give a fantastic experience on those devices right out of the gate, because there have been varying levels of quality on some of the devices that have gone out with Windows as the main operating system. So we're thinking about how we pick fewer partners, but still really big large volume partners. You see us right now it's Samsung, Motorola, Kyocera, HTC, those sort of big volume manufacturers, and just really making sure that we invest a lot of resources into those those particular hardware companies so that we get a great experience at the back end. I think the other thing that is probably maybe not seen so much, certainly in the consumer world, is that, as Daniel was saying, it is sort of one environment, and we've seen a lot of very successful mobile applications that have been built on top of the Windows platform. So, I think back to a few that I'm aware of, but I know that in the medical field, there have been applications that have been built for nurses who go out to remote locations and enter information into a service, and they can actually get specific information on if they're writing if they're requesting particular drugs or supplies, they'll get a drop down list that doesn't allow them to make a mistake and all those sorts of things. Those are applications that have been built on top of the Windows platform. And again, if you've got those skills, it's much easier to transfer them. Plus, there's a lot of PCs and servers out there running our applications in the back end, so it's easier to integrate with the database or the operating system, or in fact some of the larger applications that are out there.
We should get Alec maybe to come out sometime this year. Alex, the guy who runs the mobile business in Canada. If that's an interest.
We could certainly look at that.
Have we run out of time?
No. I actually got a question for the students here. So Daniel asked a question that I wish somebody would ask me when I was your age, and that is, what do you need? What do you want? What's going to help you move along? Like Microsoft is keen on moving you folks forward in developing things. So if you're presumably going to be an entrepreneur of some kind, you can't be shy when asked that question.
What are you guys working on without obviously?
You don't want to tell you the secrets.
But like, what's the roadblocks you're running up against so far? It's only a month, sorry, or 3 weeks even. But are there inevitably roadblocks, in terms of your thinking or ideas? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, since we're mobile-oriented kind of bunch here, we've run into a lot of limitations by home. So that's space, processing power, a lot of the interaction with the actual hardware. So, kind of the only way out is through the server client thing, sort of, which kind of matches a lot with the vision of Microsoft, as you mentioned. So, what do you guys have available in terms of space kind of available, for storage? I know you have
for data storage.
Yeah.
How would you?
For example, Google, mentioned that they have a 5 megabyte SQL thing available. So for my project personally, that would be very useful.
Like a database in the sky, something like that.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's a great question. So one thing we've had conversation. It's good to hear. Honestly, I don't know if we have I know we'll have a great answer in very short order.
Yeah.
But without talking too much in it, I'm going to take that away as a point where we will have an answer for you within 60 days.
So we've got a lot of, as Dan was alluding, we've got a lot of big announcements that are coming out. But I mean, I'd also encourage you to investigate the live services that are out there now that do, they certainly offer sort of basic storage, right now for applications.
I think it's 10 gigs in the SkyDrive. How big is it?
It's 5.
It's 5 gigs. Okay, and then things like the Silverlight streaming. That's free video streaming. How much is that? 10 gigs. 10 gigs of video, and that's unlimited video streaming. So if you ever know about bandwidth costs around video streaming, that's a real
the environment is actually set up, for you to upload your.
Cool. Well, I've been aware of these. About these for a while.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of more direct ways.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, having to be connected to the internet, where that's also a limitation for somebody who wants to use an application. So I'm thinking, you need to have an account with registered to be able to access this. Personalize it for for like a user
Yeah.
that uses a certain application in general. It's like for speed, for disconnect, connect.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'd say that there's a really comprehensive set of answers to that. I don't have one thing to point you to today, but I will take that away as serious feedback. Cool.
I have a question about the Xbox 360. If you know a little bit about like the roadmap for the trying to get the Xbox 360.
I'll tell you, those guys are the most secret hell. They have like locks on more doors. So I can probably, I don't know if anyone, any of the three of us really have a good direction. What are you
Specifically, what are you interested in?
More interested in sort of the target market, I guess. Like, like, are they like I know Netflix is like going, it's like, is it on the Xbox 360 now? Or?
Not Netflix. We offer video rentals on Xbox Live today. Is that so? Like, sorry.
It's only for you guys.
Sorry.
It's only in America.
No, it's actually on now. It is available. They turned it on. I know I flipped on my Xbox 360. I can see some video rentals. I don't know, cost whatever the points, 500 points or something. To rent movies. It hasn't been on for like a year or something, but it's been on for several months now.
Yeah.
And if you guys have an Xbox in here, we should plug in.
Yeah. So to continue my question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is Xbox 360 going to like have more than just gamers? It's going to turn into like more of a media center kind of thing? Or?
Oh, so I would let Barnaby answer this question because Barnaby probably it's already there. So
Yeah.
Barnaby, go ahead.
So I would say if you look at the Xbox even today, over the last couple of weeks and the last month or so, you're starting to see the price points on the Xbox really kind of break it down into a couple of areas. You've got the very high-end elite consoles, really targeting hardcore gamers who want to store a lot of content on the device, all the way down to the $200 version, which literally this device would get whenever you have one, it's in the bedroom hooked up to a big TV, has a media center extender. So you're starting to see that it's not just a gaming console, it is a key component of that lifestyle. So I think when you start to couple on the consumer side, the Xbox, media center, and home server, now you can kind of put together that entire digital environment. So you get all of your memories, all of your content centrally stored, accessible from anywhere with a really thin device. It also gives you the ability to go online, chat with friends and family, all your video content, download movies, and play all your hardcore gaming titles all across that whole platform. I think that really nicely ties back to some of the stuff Dan was alluding to earlier, where it's you bring it across an entire platform. Now you don't have to think about, well, I'm going from this device to this device, how do I move stuff backwards and forwards? That experience becomes seamless.
So
I have photos, I can show them here without having to worry.
Can I tell my story? So I went out 2 weeks ago. I have a new baby daughter, well, so does Barnaby. From my Friday nights are kind of shot now. So my Friday night was spent, I went out and picked up a home server. After she went to bed, I'm like, okay, I'll have a project for several hours, setting up my home server. And because we have like 3 computers in the house. And I'm like, okay, we wanted some central storage and stuff. So I get it home, plug it in. What else? There's really nothing else to do. So I have my home server. It basically backs up. It reaches out to all the computers in the house. It backs them up centrally on the terabyte of drives that are on it. It has 2. It mirrors the drive, so it has a nice redundancy. Like the user interface, you never see like redundancy and all that. It just does it. It backs up everything centrally. All my photos, I have like 30, 40 gigs of photos that back up into this photo directory for me. And then my Xbox, I never even used the extender before. My Xbox in my living room, I flip it on, you can flip over to the media section, and I'm like, photos, and it just picks up my home server, and all of a sudden I can look at all of our home videos that we have, all my music, it can play straight to my television. And by the way, when I'm at the office, I can actually, you get a domain on a dynamic DNS. It's all set up like automatically. It's fantastic. You can HTTPS into your home server and then control any of your computers in the house. Grab the files if you want off of the server. It's something out of like you thought like the craziest geeks would be using only, and now it's actually a consumer experience. It's absolutely wild. But this is, you can walk in and they're $500.
Yeah, it's like the product I'm developing is like it's not really targeted towards the mainstream gaming audience, but more to like everyone else. Like more of the have you ever heard of Phoenix Wright?
Sorry?
Phoenix Wright, the DS game. Yeah, it's similar to that kind of thing. It's like targeting that kind of market. So I was wondering if some people would be interested in like helping me out. And
We're always interested in helping you out. It's just a matter of how. Why don't
Why don't we continue that
Yeah.
conversation afterwards?
There's another question.
So we'd be interested in talking to you about that.
Oh, just the back to things that would potentially be useful for us, well, servers in general, but looking down the road.
But by servers in general, is it just
So, I'll get into that. For those of us who are looking at the client server model, scalability testing is something that would be useful.
So what do we have? Just out of, hey, we have Kayla here. What's the setup at the innovation?
Sorry, just so you introduced Kayla.
Oh, sorry. Kayla actually, we talked about the innovation center. Kayla runs the innovation center for Fusion Angels and Microsoft. So she's the one that you can talk to.
She emceed our dinner.
Oh, she did. Oh, okay, so you guys know Kayla.
Okay.
So what do we know? What do we have server-wise at the innovation center? Do we know?
In terms of like moving to utilize it?
Yeah. Or like we probably don't. We should get you the config specs so you can just come out and play with it.
I mean, the idea is that if you come in and you want to test out an application, that you can actually utilize that environment. I mean, Dell put the server advantage. Can you remember exactly the specs on that server in there? It's pretty highly spec.
The Dell quad-core processor?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So there's that in terms of infrastructure. We also have there's a couple of online infrastructures that in terms of I'm thinking about the virtual labs and stuff that we have available through MSDN. If you go to the MSDN site, just look at virtual labs. You'll see some stuff there. There is our dev tools. So if you're trying like load testing and stuff like that, our dev tools, our dev suite, which you can get through MSDN AA, and I forget which version is on DreamSpark off the top of my head, but definitely the one in MSDN AA, which is everything in MSDN AA, allows you to do an immense amount of really cool load testing, every type of unit test, like your entire specs on a single machine. And on top of it, I should say, our Hyper-V virtual server type scenarios that you can do some really amazing testing on without having multiple processors. That's what's available to you today. Beyond that, beyond actually putting like some massive data center, if you guys are willing to install the air conditioners, we'd be open to the conversation.
I would also say stay tuned to post-BDC.
Yeah, that's it. And again, I'd say the T-minus 30.
Yeah, we definitely need to. There's a few things that I've taken away from this, and we definitely need to come back and do another session. Not later on this year, early next year, because there'll be a lot of these challenges that you guys have experienced will be solved by some of the things that you'll see announced in the next little while. So.
Yeah.
The completely tangential question we were talking about related to your question actually. The mobile market is seeing a huge growth right now in products, applications primarily that allow you to scan barcodes, get information about products. Android, the Android, platform just funded a large amount of money in the application that allows you to scan a barcode of an item.
Yeah.
And from there, look at all the local listings, look at all the online listings. You can see both brick and mortar, both website, all within the same.
There's a bunch of standards, right, for the.
Yeah, but you can see as a global standard that is GS1 working really hard to kind of push that to be standard these days. And my big question, partially twofold really, is Microsoft interested in getting into this field, knowing that Android already is in this field? Apple will undoubtedly be entering this market with their iPhones, supporting this sort of system. Does Microsoft have any intention? Do they have a team? And if not, will they pay? Will they support one in velocity?
So I'm not familiar with all the standards, but I know that for some time we'll be doing a lot in the like certainly in the RFID tag area, and certainly we have a lot of manufacturers that we work with already that allow you to scan barcodes or scan tags and then actually take that information and do something with it. It sounds like we just need to give you some information on exactly what we're doing. I'm not sure from a standards perspective exactly how we're playing. Generally, we do have a big push around interoperability, and certainly with all the major operating systems, and we do tend to try and form up to certainly a lot of the web standards bodies and standards bodies that are out there. So I'm sure we're playing in there in some way, shape, or form. But we can certainly give you some information on what we're doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Grab my business card afterwards.
Yeah, I'll talk to you afterwards.
No, it's
great. I would actually, and on Peter's earlier point on that blog, there's a mobility portfolio. I forget who owns the mobility.
Yeah, if we could get that contact information.
Yeah, we point. So that will point you also to the website, and I guarantee.
We've got some cards here, so we can sort of give them. We can point them in the right direction. So.
Yeah. For web development, how would you compare like Microsoft's IIS or ASP versus something like Apache?
Wow, that's a very big question. What
would you say? Why would you say that someone should use Microsoft's solution versus
I'll take a crack at that.
Yeah, I was going to say, you take a crack at
that.
We'll answer it all one way.
The first thing that I would say with that is, and this is something we hear a lot, it's not IS and ASP versus Apache and PHP.
Yeah.
It's kind of thinking about, there's actually a lot of shops now that are looking at IIS as a platform, PHP is the language running on top of it. So first we just kind of reset that mindset that it's not watered down. You can absolutely do PHP on IIS, and there's some great stories and some great testimonials of people doing it. The question I'm going to go back and ask is to start to say, what is it you're trying to do, and what is the best language to do that? Certainly, pure web environment, you can develop that in PHP. Daniel's comment earlier, as you're starting to use .NET, the code that you're writing for an ASP.NET application, running that over seamlessly to client-side code on a mobile device, that becomes a lot easier to do versus taking some PHP code, which kind of has defined where it's going to live, to port that into anything else becomes really more of a challenge. You start making the investment to say, it's PHP, we do one thing, it's .NET. If I want to go XMA and drop this on the Xbox later, or if I want to go mobile, I can do that. I'm not rewriting that code into a different language. You're kind of making that on, here's a platform that's been mobile device, PC, server, Xbox. You don't have to make the choice of which platform. You're just going to make it fun.
Yeah. Fantastic. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
We're some more the product business guys, so we've got Barnaby here.
I was actually thinking,
techie questions.
Yeah, what do I tell you performance-wise? Yeah, sorry.
I'm just curious how much development at Microsoft is being done in .NET languages these days compared to
I remember getting asked that question like 5 years ago, and the answer, and I would say it's very big. However, there are certain things where there are certain places where we still do some unmanaged development, significant places where we do unmanaged development, and the reason because of that is that take like Office, maybe 100 million lines of code at this point, maybe more. There's certain things in there that are so efficient and done really, really well. You don't want to mess with it. It's part of our intellectual property that we spent so much time, whether it's building the patents, the innovation around, and it's kind of like why rewrite it? Why change something? And so there's scenarios like that all over the place. You look deep into the certain things and deep into the OS. There's certain things that really are great, and there's no reason in terms of rewriting it for that situation. However, when we look at a lot of our new developments, like our brand new tool set for designers, Expression, Expression Studio, made up of 3 products: Expression Blend, Expression Design, I'm not really thinking so far, and Expression Media, sorry, and Encoder. Those products are actually, so Expression Blend is a fantastic example. It's actually built in Expression Blend. It's a really cool thing. It's actually built using itself, earlier revs of itself, and it's completely managed, completely managed. So that's an example. There's a ton of other examples of where, figure out that version. And there's a ton of other examples like that where net new development, because of the rapid development opportunity, because of the speed of the platform, and because of the tools that just, if you haven't used the stuff, like play around with it, you'll see just how fast and how efficient you can build something really amazing and focus on things like user experience, on the bigger problem, on your innovation, as opposed to some of the plumbing that in the past you've had to deal with. So I hope that answers your question.
One more question, back to my favorite little topic. It's probably for my own knowledge. I'm going to rattle off maybe 5 things to ask you folks what you really want. Not that maybe Microsoft can provide it for you, but maybe it'll set some, at least in my mind, it'll help me out sort of understand what things you really need. And I'll give you 5 things, and there's probably others. Equipment, software, money, ideas, or time. Like, which of those things do you need? Okay, let's pick one. Okay, I could have guessed that.
So with
time is a big factor, right? Like the time to focus on the ideas you have. It's not time is something related to money, that sort of thing. And I mean, who knows? It might be a way that Microsoft can help you with time.
I can show you how our when you're building some fantastic piece of software, I'll put my product manager hat. Now it is going to save you a ton of time.
There was a question.
Or prototyping all the way through. Yeah.
It depends on where in the life cycle of the project you're at. So I think everybody's at the beginning of the project. So most of what we need right now is ideas, mentors, perhaps to give us ideas.
Well, you got to improve right away.
Later on, once we have prototypes, we could use some money.
Sure.
Systems with market research would actually be of great use.
What kind of market research?
So, I mean, it's just getting to our resources right now is just people we can contact, Google, things like that.
Yeah.
If you're looking at the finance industry, it's pretty closed. So, contacts there, I know Microsoft has a lot of.
So I would love on that question though, I will put this out as an offer. As a marketer, I would be happy to do a section on how you can get a ton of insight into anything that you're trying to do for little to no money. Because I will tell you, I have some of the best market research that I base on, and a lot of that we do, I can do for less than $30. And there are some just insane tools out there, everything from, quite honestly, from your library, which I bet half of you don't go to anymore, to Statistics Canada, to a million other places around in terms of online and other places. It really comes down to asking the right questions. And I would, if that's of interest, if anyone would be interested, I'd just talk to Sean or whoever, and I'd be more than happy to come in and do that. From a marketing perspective. Beyond that, it's kind of hard to give away some of the internal market research.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have to be careful from a licensing perspective with Forrester and Gartner and all that sort of thing. But one of the benefits of that Power program that I was talking about, one of the benefits is that through that program you do get access to a lot of that information. And I agree with Daniel. I actually think that that's one of the biggest benefits that we can offer through some of our programs, is actually giving access to what some of the analysts think of certain niches and subsegments of markets and where they see the opportunities, because that gives you, a great piece of information. So we should have a think about how we can
and you should also check
give access to these, give access to some of those tools.
I would also check with the university library, because honestly, my wife just finished her thesis, and I was amazed at she has So we have access to this system of like every research done with all, like every journal does it like crazy. And it's actually available to all university students. And then that's the one, it's actually the same one that we subscribe to at Microsoft. And I was like, that is amazing, and it doesn't cost her a thing. And I would bet you just with a little bit of research, you might find just probably too much data at your fingertips. And like I said, I think it comes down to asking the right questions. And then, of course, beyond that, there are other options like Power. I know we are over time, but if anyone needs to leave, you're welcome to leave. I'm happy to stick around for a little bit to chat.
Maybe if there's one more question for the group, and then you can hang around and ask questions individually. Is there one last question anyone wants to ask?
So, what do you mean by time? So everyone kind of said time. Does everyone have the same definition of time? Is it just your time, or is it mentor time? Is it like what do you mean by time?
I think it would be a very different scenario if we're all living here pursuing this philosophy full time, whereas right now all of us have other commitments full time with school. So it's difficult to give a design project like this the time and attention that it needs to actually make it happen.
Yeah.
This is really a great innovative idea and all, but at the end of the day, we're kind of newbies, which is what it is. And when you're kind of breaking eggs here and there, trying to manage time, kind of set up sort of project dates where you believe you might have it completed. You might end up going over time. So this is something that like maybe it's taught in various fields, but certainly not engineering. Right? So
time management's never taught. That's,
so
it's a gained skill.
So in looking at the fact that Microsoft is a company, we wouldn't mind having a couple of tips of how to approach tackling a project, what portions of it to tackle first, how to look for if it's feasible, it's realistic, if it's possible to tackle it.
So I will again put. I'd be happy to come out to do on like development, kind of talking about development stages and stuff like that. Thinking kind of I can even take you through and if you want to do this separately, I can take you through the typical project lifecycle at Microsoft in terms of how and it might not be conducive for this environment, right? You have to kind of think about what you guys are in startup mode, right? So startup mode is a whole. It's in you. It's not. It's just you live it, you breathe it. 24/7. You have nightmares about it. You dream. You wake. You're thinking about it. You're writing on the shower door for things, and it's like it's all encompassing. And then when you're trying to, I think, so it just kind of becomes you. And you kind of roll with it. That's just startup. That's just being in that startup mode. So we can certainly share kind of what Microsoft does. But I think probably the best thing is get some startups in here. We can help you. Get some of those entrepreneurs in here to talk about what it's like. Like I know Layla Bujang, if she came in here, she'd tell you how many hours do you guys sleep a night? Just out of curiosity.
Sleep is that?
5, 6. She'll probably say something like that's too many. Whatever it is, it's too many. But like it's the idea is startup culture is it's really it's all about thinking it and living it and doing it and being in it and what you're working on is really a part of you, right? And it needs to be a part of you and for it to succeed. So it's tough. It's I'd say that's a huge challenge. And I don't think there's really a great one answer.
That's certainly something that would be very useful for us is if you could sort of summarize some of the key asks that you've got. We have a number of people, there's 30 of us in our group, and there's people that have done the startup thing, there are people that have done large-scale software development projects that could actually come in and just, same sort of thing, maybe talk for a little bit about something, but just, an opportunity for you to ask them a whole bunch of questions. So I think one of the actions that I'll take away is that if you can sort of come back with a list of things that you're specifically interested in, we'll sort of evangelise this back internally. We've got a meeting coming up on Friday, and we'll sort of talk to the group about it. Sort of share the experience that we've had here, talk about what you guys are doing, and then maybe get some appropriate people to come back in. And I think, I think Daniel had a great idea about actually bringing some of the people that have actually done startups or in the process of doing startups themselves, or have maybe done a few to come in and talk to you as well. And I think
I'll bring in the companies that I mentor, and they will tell you, they'll tell you what they do.
like David Crow would be a good guy to come in, and this is a guy that has done a few startups, some that have been successful, some that haven't, and he could come and sort of talk to you about some of the pains that he's been through, and maybe give you some ideas. And he sort of gives he has a business and been there, done it with a project sort of angle, but also the software development angle as well. So he'd be a good guy to come in and talk to you.
Yep. And also don't take advantage of the office hours. Because even if there's someone that you particularly want, like Kayla's got us on speed dial to tell us who needs to come in. And so like go to the innovation center, like I know many of our teams are there for like days at like a day at a time. Peter's coming back at some point soon, I know. And it's various people on the team we're flowing through, and plus the Infusion guys, which by the way, if you've never met the Infusion, they are all like entrepreneurial by nature, which is kind of neat. So like, and you can just kind of feed off of their energy for a little bit, which is pretty cool. So take advantage of all those things that are
On the website, do we still have like the profiles of the people that are coming out and all that sort of thing? So the idea was that we could put our profile up there, and then you could see the skills and experience that we had, and then say, okay, well, that's a guy that's done a couple of big, has had a career in software development. I can go and talk to that person. Is that all still up on the site?
Yeah, and also what I'm going to do, what I started doing shortly, is actually sending Sean the bios of everyone that month that's going to be in Waterloo. Right. And then you can actually get like the first choice of who you want to meet with. And it's always on Tuesdays. So it's really simple for you guys. Pretty much like Tuesdays. Giving it to you.
Tuesdays is office hour day.
So
every Tuesday, remember, every
Tuesday.
Tuesday
Giving you guys the
office
first
hour.
chance to sign up for the office hours with whoever suits you. So.
And just, and I really would encourage you to use those office hours, because come in with your crazy ideas and your problems, and you just may find that bouncing that idea off someone else that's either been there or comes from a different perspective may be useful. So do use that service.
Especially if you're all asking for time, this is a perfect opportunity to come in and take advantage of someone else's time. And definitely look for that, get that mentorship piece. And like we always say, it's it's better to talk to someone else about it and get those ideas flowing, and rather talk to someone who's actually in the industry, right? And who has some things to do that in production. So take advantage of it. Free.
So I'll ask just Brooke, how many of you are at the building stage? How many of you are at the prototyping / idea stage? How many of you are searching for an idea stage? So you all kind of have an idea that you're pursuing. That's a huge. That's like the biggest challenge, is like getting from the point of to something that you want to pursue. So that's awesome. 3 weeks. Wow. Probably taking like 6 months.
3 more weeks. Be done. It's last 6 weeks. Last 6 weeks, you'll have nothing on board.
You guys are already you guys are so fast.
Well, anyway, I thank you guys very much for coming down and spending some time with us. We'd love to have you back again sometime.
Anytime.
Thank you.